As I said, I was burned 3 times, but I still burn for life, so still active.
Burnout. Much discussed, still tabooed and stigmatized. How does burnout actually feel? Who can it affect, and how do you deal with it? These and other questions demand answers. In this podcast series, we go in search of it. Welcome to the very first episode of a podcast series that promises to be exciting and, above all, very personal. We're discussing burnout. Around 20% of adults in Switzerland have already experienced burnout. Trend rising. Dark figure high. And one of them is George Lüchinger, 58 years old, born in St. Gala Rheintal, residing in Liechtenstein for a period of 30 years, and desiring to narrate its history through this series of podcasts. And most importantly, you, George, desire to narrate this story. For what reason?
I would like to make a contribution to the fact that perhaps this entire topic is still very taboo, stigmatized from my perspective. In order to alleviate that burden, to provide a voice and perhaps awaken attention, these actions truly only pertain to me and my experiences. I narrate my story, how I used to be, how I am currently. I should not act as a know-it-all for others, but perhaps serve as a guide when they find themselves in similar situations, to demonstrate that it is not enjoyable to have to justify oneself, that it is not enjoyable when fears emerge, that it is not enjoyable when people provide feedback, except that it is not directed at you, that it is not enjoyable to suddenly lose the ability to concentrate, that it is not enjoyable at all to be unable to sleep for 6 months. I would like to address all these points with the Thailandi, what we are doing now, just to give people a chance to listen, maybe to find themselves again, or, and I have been an entrepreneur for 30 years this year, maybe to awaken entrepreneurs, to really make them aware that it is an economic factor on the one hand, but that they are people who are actively involved in the business, who may not be doing well. You can't see it, and people don't want to communicate, because often in businesses the culture of making mistakes does not prevail, but rather the culture of having to do things right. If you can make a small difference there, then what we're doing now and will still do has already made complete sense.
You are currently facing your third burnout. How are you doing at the moment? How are you doing today, at the beginning of the year 2024?
Now it's bad when you face me with the third, truly insane. How can something like this occur? Doesn't he learn anything? Maybe this is a first summary. Yes, I have learned I am doing well. The doctors would say, in circumstances that are well known, accordingly well. I have returned to the office for the first time in 3 months, back with the laptop, back in a manner that allows me to actually do some work. However, it is only reduced, as I'm still in the middle of quasi-reconditioning. I have a strong desire to come back, and I will, because what I have gone through in this third dive has been incredibly valuable. The inpatient rehabilitation, the stay I had, and also the way I got there have all contributed to my journey. That's why I am determined to continue and make the most of this experience. So, from that particular point of view, I am actually doing quite well. The night before last wasn't very good in terms of sleep quality. I was feeling nervous this morning, and I also woke up early just now. I stood up to start my day. I anticipated the first work day all week, but on the morning of it, I felt anxious about reuniting with the team. When I saw the team, the people in the company, it calmed down. It was fine, no problem. A total of 3 hours was sufficient. That is the crazy thing. You have to make the experience first. 3 hours was sufficient. Now I'm hopeful that we can successfully make it through the day within the next hour.
When you say it's sufficient for 3 hours, what do you mean by that?
The quality, being able to deliver quality, is something that distinguishes one. And that is what is missing when you enter this down phase. And today it was like this, the 3 hours. First I just said hello, and got to know each other, but then I already had a customer appointment. And customer appointments are truly the essence for me, the renowned salt in the soup. I am strong on the front line and enjoy performing. And there I gained the experience that after approximately 1 hour, precisely after 3/4 of an hour, it was sufficient. I noticed, now I'm getting tired. The good thing about what I didn't have 3 months ago is the spontaneous creativity. We could discuss something. Inputs were given by me. Additionally, due to his strength, you need to determine during this stage what you are truly skilled at and what you are not. And that was acceptable, but after that I was truly exhausted, mentally exhausted, so I said yes, now it's okay. The initial plan was for me to be at the company from 9 to 12, but due to my inability to sleep, I ended up leaving earlier and arriving at 7:30. As a result, I had to pack my belongings and depart earlier than originally intended, while also finding a way to stay at the company for a longer duration than initially planned.
And how do you currently handle customers with business appointments when you recognize, okay, enough is enough? Do you communicate transparently, or how do you deal with it?
Good question. Initial experience today, this is not something you encounter on a daily basis. Although I am already undergoing this phase for the 3rd time, we will discuss later about the distinctiveness of these phases that are always or were always different. I trust it only functions with open communication. That is the knowledge I have acquired. I did not actually do that in my second low point, particularly not towards myself. I did not believe it, did not accept it, not even at a later time. I am now more mature than before. I'm now at 50 in the night. Back then I was 37. Had the feeling? Yes, no problem. You must address it, and that is why we are doing what we are doing today. I desire to support it. I was not a seller with my diagnosis at the conclusion of the previous year. In some way, I also did not have the courage to say it in any way, because it is also related to justification, and I was hesitant to express my thoughts. It is something that one does not see. And when you communicate, that's such a standard phrase, yes, but not you, when I say that to someone. On the specific question, how now today, I didn't say, hey colleagues, I had a burnout, 45 minutes, I can't anymore, but you can also steer a conversation like that. Agreed. We had a 1 hour time frame from 10 to 11, and that was acceptable. I will implement certain organizational adjustments to mitigate this issue. I will not schedule any appointments before 9 in the morning for the time being, so that I can really start the day properly. This is also a realization of the therapies, and that is part of it. And I know I will reach a point where I can be completely open about it when I am not feeling well, that I say sorry, but now it is enough.
To have a better grasp of your story, it is helpful, of course, if we get to know you even better. Your life is incredibly diverse and filled with constant activity, reflecting a truly vibrant and dynamic existence. You have a lot of activities, you are an entrepreneur, you moderate on stage at the Spengler Club in Davos, at the Tour de Suisse, you organize events, you are a communication expert. How would you introduce yourself?
I am extremely active. I feel incredibly privileged and fortunate to have this opportunity. And this privilege also comes with a cost. Additionally, what we are discussing today is also included in the overall price that you have to pay. Being privileged, I am able to do what I love each and every day without any limitations. I find it incredible to be able to have this experience. It was not always like this. Heinrich von Stein assisted me, a quote from him, "Be cautious of the decision that does not bring a smile to your face." I like to laugh, I laugh a lot, and do a lot too. And if you do a lot, and if you enjoy what you do, then the price you pay is the risk you take, that you may eventually lose control. And that is clearly the case with me, the measure lost. I do not want to lose that. I was asked about the changes I will make now upon leaving the clinic. I have previously mentioned that one thing I am determined not to modify is my attitude towards work. What I will change is the workflow, the quantity. Something has to happen. The mentality, the DNA that I have, I am reliable and stay reliable. I am late on the left side. I consistently arrive ahead of schedule, not behind. You're aware, when you interact with me, tasks are simply completed in the manner you can anticipate from me. And it should remain that way. Well, I believe I am currently engaged. I adore life. Or as I mentioned, I was scorched 3 times, but I still have an intense passion for life. So, still in an active state. With the knowledge I have now, it is what I already knew previously, but now I am aware of it and believe it as well, of course with certain limitations.
Let's explore your story. Let's explore the year around 1990, give or take, leading up to your initial experience of burnout. What was your life like at that point in the past?
Just as thrilling as explained or tried to clarify before. So, it was like this. I was at the beginning of my journalistic work in radio in Gala Rheintal, a pilot project, Radio Rheintal, sought 4 journalists and 4 radio makers without prior knowledge. They needed individuals crazy enough to sign a contract with no claims if the project failed within 6 months. Fit perfectly. I started, and after about a year I already received the offer from St. Gallen. At that time the local radio scene was strong in Switzerland. In the east, a major broadcaster, Radio Actuel, succeeded FM1. At that moment you can perceive the dimension, and afterwards I was given the opportunity to assume the role of sports director. Editor-in-chief sports, 15 freelancers in St. Gallen, with FC St. Gallen, with St. Otto in handball, with ice hockey, also fantastic and exciting here. Then I began in 1990, and the work was extremely thrilling and demanding, and then my DNA comes into action that in Swiss German you are not familiar with the Larifari, but you have to persevere with it. It was a truly remarkable experience that shaped my professional journey in a profound way. Maybe it's also a question of self-confidence. You have too little, so you have to do more than the others. And so I headed the sports department, with the consequence 91. I drove from Rheinvlei to St. Gallen and downwards. Things kept blurring and becoming increasingly hazy as I made my way. I could no longer see clearly, had problems with concentration, and then just thought, yeah, maybe a little bit of stress. And at a certain point it was so severe that it nearly became hazardous, and then I visited the doctor. Real chat. Then he gets to it and says, yeah, you've accomplished a ton. How was your recovery? How often have you taken vacations? Did I say yes, the last 18 months, 3 days on average per month? Then he says, yes, the case is clear, you are tired, you need a vacation. No one has talked about burnout yet, but today I know that was the initial bang. I had to take 4 weeks of vacation, which were prescribed as holidays due to illness. Had the opportunity to have a house on an island, slept for a week only. I knew that. It's amazing how tired one can be. And now this, after 30 years, the same traits remain. Recovery is crucial. Strength comes from tranquility. This is not merely a trivial saying. There is an abundance of power in it. And then I returned with this power, and that remained strong and resilient. In 1994, I became self-employed. And then you have new priorities in any case. And so somehow it got messed up, didn't think about it anymore, and always felt strong and confident in my abilities.
What would you give to your past self from your present perspective after going through this initial burnout experience? Is there something you may have overlooked once more when you state it got a bit mixed up then?
Yes, certainly. I overlooked the structure. However, it was not conveyed with great clarity. Today we are much further. The methodology, the therapies, they are magnificent. Today you're in good hands when you receive such a diagnosis, which wasn't the case before. They just did too much. And with the knowledge of today, having possessed the knowledge in 1991, that would have assisted me. I do not believe I would have entered a second hammer. However, apart from that, no. Because the workload was too much, it was considered okay and fine by those involved in the task.
Can you remember how your environment reacted when you said, "Hey, I'll be taking a few weeks off"?
A central point, both in the past and present, is the environment, which will continue to be significant in the future. And in the event that I decrease the environment of that particular time to the managing director of Radio Actuel and to my family, then it was of such utmost importance that I felt a sense of improvement afterwards, and throughout the course of the journey there was an absence of any guilty conscience. The managing director, who has an excellent personality, immediately said, "Yes, of course you need a break. We are responsible. We should not have allowed you to come this far." Such a sentence may accompany us throughout this series. That would actually be precisely the mindset of an entrepreneur. Nowadays, an owner must think like an individual, as you are dealing with individuals. And the majority of the statistics you mentioned, 17% have already experienced it, and 25% perceive themselves as being at risk. They recuperate in the organization. Generally, the job is accountable for that. And I had the support, and then from home as well, and that helped. Also, environment is crucial.
And that was also the main reason why you came out so clean again? I mean, in quotation marks and closing quotes?
Yes, I believe so. I believe so. Simply the comprehension. However, there has not been any significant discussion about anything yet. It was just like that. So the team, consisting of my 15 freelance employees, had a little more work to do. The EIC had to take over a few things, but afterwards I was back, and obviously it's been a few years now, also back in a form where everyone feels like, yes, it did him good, had a vacation, finally, and now everything is fine again.
And then, what was the course of your life after experiencing the initial burnout? How did you navigate through life at that time?
Then, 3 years later, the step into self-employment came in 1994, so now 30 years, and the path formed. I think this is true for many who begin with an idea. To start Sportscom. At that point, I was the sole person. Today, one 3-division football club has a media spokesperson. That was somewhat avantgardistic. It requires a considerable amount of energy. You must provide individuals with a requirement for them to accept it and desire it. That needs energy. However, since I could honestly state that I could pursue my passions and interests without any limitations, no opportunity seemed out of reach. I never experienced that sense of restriction. There are always those days when you're exhausted, and then perhaps the following day you simply persevere and keep going. And that actually went relatively well for quite a long period of time. Until that point, yes, nearly a decade later, something arose that I had not experienced in that aspect up until then, where it truly concerned, I no longer have the desire, but I am unsure why. Naturally, there was a substantial amount of work involved, but it was a distinct type of fatigue that I had not encountered before. It wasn't easy. Now I need to take a week off. It was noticeable. There is much more that doesn't work. An imbalance, psychosomatic, as they say today. I had to change something. And there came the environment once more. It was the year 2004, and I had earned the trust of Andy Rees, a significant accomplishment. In 2018, he passed away. One individual, along with his brother Jörg, possessed the 2 most significant private sports sponsors in Switzerland at that time, and he employed me as the communication chief for his cycling concepts. Phonak cycling team, BMC racing team, and there I was back to the point of the radio. Incredibly exciting. Traveled around, did the Tour de France, 130 days on the road. News introduced, multilingual on the go, also more demanded there, until it just didn't work anymore. Forget things, no longer creative in writing. And then the point arrived, Andy, I need to talk to you. It is imperative that we have a conversation as soon as possible. That is when I initially experienced the fear as well, the subject of fear, truly a pivotal point. Fear in the sense that I had to anticipate and be ready for the possibility of losing a job at this point in time. It was a requirement. It was not my primary job, but it was a mandate that I am no longer able to fulfill. And precisely the opposite has occurred. He mentioned that he was still surprised that it hadn't occurred sooner. So with a commitment and this and back and forth, and said, pause, don't want to see you anymore until you feel better. And that was in the latter portion of the year, originating from the year itself, but it took me a considerable amount of time to acknowledge to myself that I experience this fatigue when I stand in front of the mirror and then have the realization, hey, you are not in good health. That was still very intense and the tension was palpable. Then arrived the stationery, it advanced, and the assistance was there and that assisted me. And we were already a bit further than in 91, although the therapy forms are not comparable to what exists today.
But from the exterior, a life of dreams, one could argue.
Certainly. In my opinion, the answer is definitely yes, without a doubt, yes, certainly. For those who don't like to travel, it's a trauma to do such a job. But if someone likes sports at the level, I often had the opportunity to participate in sports at the top level. You mentioned the Spengler Cup, the world's best hockey tournament since 1998. Can I vote there? You mentioned the Wies Tour. I've been there from 91. The vocal representation of the most significant annual sports event in Switzerland. I was present at the Olympic Games, at the World Championships. Yes, it is a dream. However, once again, everything in life comes with its price.
What would you do differently now from today's point of view?
If I had knowledge of everything you are asking, it would be a straightforward task. In reality, it is simple but not easy. Simple because there are numerous more possibilities today. To do something good, even in the area we are talking about now, but it is not easy because it requires adjustment, it requires discipline, it requires perseverance, it requires courage to change, it requires the courage to say no. There are numerous aspects that, as an entrepreneur, you do not really have on the menu. I would and I do engage in more strategic planning, as mindfulness is deeply ingrained in one's mindset and influences every decision and action I take. I look at myself, and that goes beyond planning. When I make appointments, I am always punctual. Actually, I didn't make any major appointments for myself. That is a realization of the phase I am in now. I've mentioned one. Until further notice, no appointments before 9 o'clock. I require the day to enter. I will be at my residence in the evening at 6 p.m. with my phone turned off. Is a key point of focus in all studies for these burnouts, emphasizing the significance of this constant availability in their lives. Absurd, how we function, including me, one thinks one must. Absurd, you don't have to, it wasn't like that prior. Emails that are currently being received by me will be processed and attended to within the upcoming 24 hours from the time of their arrival at my inbox. This is communicated. Up until this point, it was like this. An email arrived and you respond quickly. You can also educate yourself in this manner. Emails that are received during the weekend will be responded to on Monday. Something has also entered into the lives of many individuals due to their constant access to this 24/7. You always write it. And then one thinks that one must also immediately give something back. During the weekend, prohibition should not apply to the employees. The weekend is a time that should be respected and enjoyed. I have clearly communicated the information to all of my friends in my social circle. You are also on board with my new direction. We have a great clique, and you are part of it. I stated, we are doing it at the moment. There are 4 couples. Each couple has something to organize in a quarter. If it's just one evening playing cards or 3 days of wellness, it doesn't matter. But we manage our time. It fits perfectly because a friend was also in that phase last year or a year and a half ago, and he has a complete understanding with his environment. Therefore, this will be altered at present. The setting will stay the same, but there will be a change in the organization that will take place.
And you are absolutely right. That actually sounds relatively feasible, doable, but in practice, thinning out the schedule a bit and adjusting life a little is not as easy as it may initially appear.
Yes, I have already made myself known, so to speak. I desired to be present in the office by 9 o'clock this morning. I was there at 7:30. What works extremely well is the mobile phone. That works. And many other things, which are of an organizational nature, of a time nature, supposedly not possible, will also work effectively and efficiently. And stating a negative response is an extremely pivotal aspect. Expressing a negative response then transforms into an affirmation for oneself. You still have to learn that, and I really want to make that conscious. I don't want to get to the point where my brain is no longer capable of making such decisions. And to go through life at this pace permanently can have consequences far beyond just, let's say, a burnout.
Let's return to that moment. The second time you experienced burnout. That was the initial occasion you visited the clinic. What was it like for you during that time in the past?
That was a rather unusual occurrence because it took place during the spring season, and there was a build-up of symptoms that occurred at that particular time. I went to my family doctor, and my family doctor is more than just a family doctor. He is really a very, very important person also in this context. He has been accompanying me all the time, even today. I genuinely have absolute trust in him in that specific area until the very last moment. I went to him in May, described the symptoms, and he said, yes, the case is clear anyway. If not you, then who? He knew my resume a little bit and said, you have to take it a little slower. And you have the freedom to interpret this calmly as you like. And now I have arrived, and unfortunately, I have interpreted it in a way that puts me at a disadvantage, because I may have simply decreased this calm approach from, let's say, 12 hours to 11 hours and 50 minutes. Take it easy. So I essentially proceeded in the same manner. Then the question also arose, should we provide support with medication for assistance? Did I say no? Being quite conservative, I do not require any medication. It was okay, and it did not improve. I didn't feel the need for any treatment. Now is the time when, in the past, I am talking about it, which brings us to the present day. In the past, I was unable to discuss it. In the past, I did not desire to be the one perceived as weak. I was the weak individual. The strong individual is the one who stands by it, and I simply did not accept it as I should have. I truly did not anticipate it. Up until that mentioned November, that is actually insane and completely unexpected in every way. From May, then summer, where you could relax. We had vacation until November, when I couldn't go on. And it was truly like that. And it is not staged mirror situation in the morning. I looked in and said, you are sick. And from the moment I accepted it, and I only discovered it in the last therapy session, that's the central point, that many people resist it. I can understand. When this step is done, then the recovery begins. I accepted it, went to the general practitioner and said, yes, I know you were right for a long time, but I can't take it anymore, I'm sick. And then came the chance to recuperate and regain strength at a burnout clinic through a specialized recovery program. The entire therapy was condensed to going for a run at that time, which is still beneficial in the present day, and continues to be effective if you allocate the time and relax. Massages, also extremely relaxing and beneficial, and a form of jogging, so breathing therapy combined with relaxation. And that was it, and simply take your time, calm down, take it easy. That has brought a great deal of good. Even at that time I was aware that it lasted for 4 weeks, and afterwards it became a test of endurance at the Spengler Cup on the 26th of December, parallel to the situation I am currently experiencing. It was successful, but then it started functioning properly. I only obtained it in early March. I had no creativity, as I was accustomed to, no assertiveness, and no stamina, which was a significant change from my usual state. So the entire process actually took a rather lengthy period of time.
And what did it do to you on a personal level? You mentioned that you were capable of embracing it for the very first time during that period.
Certainly, I lacked perspective regarding what happens presently. Has it disappeared now? And there comes again the point where I say, do I have something to say? I also communicated this in the clinic last year. Then I would suggest applying a cast on the arm as a treatment for every patient who is experiencing burnout immediately, because then you can see if someone in our environment comes along with a cast on their arm, on their foot, it doesn't matter, and says to me, "Oh, did you hurt yourself?" "Yes, I injured myself." Discussion at the conclusion. With burnout, you are unable to see it. You don't feel it for a long time. When you finally experience it, it comes with so many facets that you can't classify it accurately. That's how I felt. As I said at the beginning, I'm not telling anyone what to do. I'm just saying how I felt. And at that moment, when you communicate, then the reaction, I don't have you. So one has to commence justifying oneself. All of these things that cause harm and damage. Presently, I am encountering an undesired experience. Regrettably, I have forgotten the question that was asked of me. If we had started what we are doing now 4 months ago, I would have been at my limit after just 4 questions. This is also a consequence of this diagnosis, the level of concentration that is observed. Didn't expect it to happen here now. Don't want to gloss over anything either. It is what it is. I believe we have been very focused for a good half hour now. That is still missing. The energy is still missing. At times I experience it on various levels. It is not evident from my appearance. Fortunately, I have still maintained the appearance that I am pretending something for a certain period of time, but precisely in the fact that we are now addressing this, I don't want to play it down anymore. I would like to transmit this to others. I am aware from my time in inpatient care that numerous individuals encounter difficulties with having to justify themselves, having to downplay something. I can only state, I comprehend it, but do not perform it, because that is also an additional step towards recuperation.
And that's why I would say, let's make a first cut here, first episode. Very brief last query for you, George. What is your current emotional state following these enjoyable 30 minutes?
I actually feel quite good, which is surprising given how I felt earlier in the day. No, actually, that is a word you do not need at all. I feel good. I feel positive about it because the current actions we are taking are part of a process that we initiated several weeks ago. That we are now implementing this, I actually think is great. It's not about ego stories, but it's really about showing that you're doing something on the topic. I am doing well. I feel a bit empty at the moment in relation to my ability to concentrate. I do not feel tired enough to fall asleep at this moment, but I am happy and grateful that you provided me with a time master and stated that it is all. That's all for me today.
Thanks, George, for your candid words. There are still numerous questions about this topic, many of which are also about your story. We will certainly talk about it in detail, about the third burnout. We will talk about your clinic stays, about the general understanding in society, and maybe also hear one or the other personal tip from you. Thanks a lot, George. Until next time.
Thanks, Hans. I'm glad.